When my brother and I were around 12 years old, we were at my dad and stepmom's house in the afternoon, probably around 3 p.m., so it was still broad daylight. My brother and I were the only two people home, because my dad, stepmom, and younger siblings were in a nearby town for their soccer game. The two of us were lounging in my dad's room, which was located at the back of the house, and watching a movie when we heard a knock on the front door. My brother and I grew up with our single mom, and were latchkey kids, so being home alone and having people stop by wasn't concerning or weird for us, especially back in those days where it was more common for friends to drop by your house to see if you were home, since not every kid had a cell phone to get in touch. But on this day, we were at my dad's house, like I said, and didn't know anyone in the neighborhood, so the knock at the door was weird, since none of our friends or relatives lived nearby to come over randomly. Both of us wanted to ignore the knocking and wait for the person to go away, but being latchkey kids in a house where it wasn't normal for people to stop by unexpectedly, my instinct was to go make sure the door was locked. We sure as hell knew better than to go and make our presence known, and damn sure weren't gonna open the door. But in my mind, there was no getting around one of us going to make sure nothing was unlocked. I knew my brother and could tell that he wasn't going to do it, so I volunteered, cause it was an overwhelming priority. I got up and stealthily creeped down the hallway leading from my dad's room to the front door. There was a window next to the door, so I crouched around and very carefully peeked between the blinds before reaching out and twisting the door lock as silently as I could. It was unlocked, so I'm so glad that I went to check. When I peeked out the window, I saw a middle-aged man, slim and tall, but not huge, and bald on the top with some sort of salt and pepper hair wrapped around the sides of his head. He had his hands behind his back. I can't recall if it was one hand or both, and one of his hands was a metal object that I took for a knife, but to this day, I can't for sure say what he was holding. He did not see me looking at him through the window, or if he did, he at least didn't look at me and let me know that he knew I was there. And the way the house was designed, the front door wasn't visible from the street, cause there were bushes and tall trees blocking it. My 12-year-old heart sank knowing this random guy was at the door with what I thought was a knife behind his back, or at the very least, a metal object that he felt was necessary to put behind his back. It was especially terrifying because I recognized it was actually not super unrealistic, since the man would not be visible from the street and therefore could hide something behind his back without worrying about neighbors or cars passing by and seeing him. This house would be a good target for someone looking to do bad stuff, since you'd be shielded from being seen. At this point, normal paranoia became full-on fight or flight panic mode. It was like a switch was flipped from let me just go make sure the door was locked to holy crap, I think there's a guy with a knife at the door. I creeped back to my dad's room and told my brother what I seen. He grabbed the house phone. I can't remember if there was one in my dad's room or if he had to go to another room. But before long, he was speaking with my dad on the phone. My dad immediately instructed us to let his bulldog buddy in from the backyard. Let me tell you, in a situation of pure terror, having a big loud dog was the one bit of hope. Without Buddy there, I don't ever want to imagine sitting in that feeling of terror without any hope of someone or something there to save you as a child, or at least give you a sense of having a chance. From there, my brother and I locked ourselves in a bathroom by the front door, not sure why we decided to hide in the closest room to the guy outside. From inside the bathroom, we called 911 while my brother clutched a kitchen knife, both of us ugly crying and struggling to get words out to the operator. While in the bathroom, I heard the front door handle being twisted around, which would have meant the guy was now trying to enter the house. The bathroom was like 7 feet from the front door, so I know what I heard. I don't know how I could confuse such a specific sound, so I trust that it was what I thought it was. I have such vivid memory of huddling in that bathroom, feeling truly helpless and out of control of what might happen next, with the only comfort being the noise of Buddy barking at the front door, and knowing that if the guy decided to kick the door down, he'd have to deal with a big dog, then have a fight knife with 2 kids. Needless to say, I was really hoping Buddy would hold it down for us, cause I didn't like our odds if the man at the door got past Buddy. Before long, the cops arrived, and shortly after, my dad and stepmom got home too. The guy was gone by then, and nothing ever came of it. I hope I never meet that man, and never find out what was behind him. For some context, 5 teenagers, all around 15, in an isolated area, frequently visited by various homeless and drug-dependent individuals at 11 p.m. Sounds like a fun night, right? So to start, I'll say that this night and what I experienced definitely affected me and how I look at and think about certain situations. About 5 years ago, myself and 4 friends decided that we'll be asking our parents if we could stay out past our usual time, being that it was the beginning of summer and the school year was finally over. So we all meet up and are just walking around and talking and thinking of what we're gonna do as the sky fades from blue to a beautiful orangish pink color. As the sky turned dark with not a single star shining, we arrived at a school that happened to be having a mural painted on one of its huge walls. In front of the wall is a large metal scaffold type structure. Me, being dumb and reckless, decided to climb it because why not? After getting to the second to top platform, I asked my friend on the ground to snap a pic of me. After all was said and done, at Area 1, we decided to leave and made our way into the subway, which we hopped and then got onto a train and decided to ride to our next destination. The ride was honestly the best thing about that night looking back. We were goofing around in this empty train, laughing, swinging on things, crossing through the different train carts, just being absolute hooligans. The train arrives at the stop, and a few friends are suggesting that we hop this fence and explore the subway tunnels. To this suggestion, I get a feeling of dread. I shot the idea down immediately, saying that's a bad idea, and we leave the subway. Back on the streets, it seems even darker out, due to there being more space between streetlights around this area. We entered this big park. Honestly, I don't know what to call it. It's a really large area with a man-made lake being the focal point, with woods and other small bodies of water scattered around in the outskirts and road that circles around the main area. We walked around in the wooded area until we realized the flashlights had seriously been killing our phone batteries. So around this time, I get a really weird feeling, like we shouldn't be there. I try to keep calm and brush it off as anxiety, but do say that we should probably start walking to an exit, which we do. The route we take is to the backside exit. Now in the back end of the park, it switches up a bit. The back end of the park is different in a few ways than the rest. Unlike its wavy churn-filled counterparts, the back road was almost completely straight, which made it look much longer. So here we are, walking down the back road, as my friend Gabe and I have the dumbest idea. Let's scare everyone. Thinking on the spot, we go under the highway and easily find some broken wood for whatever reason, while not being noticed. We toss the wood, causing a loud echo bang. We come out running, exclaiming that we're being chased, and to our surprise, it works really well. They start running down the road and look back and scream, bursting into a sprint. So we're pretty amused at first, until the screaming part. That's when we turned around to see some homeless men who looked to be high on something, jogging towards us. I remember he was wearing a dirty, worn out purple shirt. We thought it would be a good idea to not run away, because standing our ground, but I don't know if that was the best choice. The man jogs up behind us, then begins walking between the two of us, and puts his arm around my shoulder and pulls my body around, jokingly saying something like, "Hey buddy, what you doing here?" I don't think I responded, and if I did, I probably told him to get off me. So his playful shaking me with his one arm on my shoulder turned into him getting me into a chokehold from behind. I'm not sure how, but I threw this grown man off me and onto the ground and then proceeded to run away. The man wasn't able to get up, so we got away. Later that night, we were climbing a tree and saw that man walk right by us. I'm not sure how he didn't see us, but that was our cue to get home. When I was 17, my parents were in the process of building their first greenhouse. It wasn't very big, but was functional. We used to grow plants like snapdragons, basils, tomatoes, strawberries, and so much more. They also had recently, at the time, added a few fruit trees, mostly peaches and apples, but there were 2 other fruit trees that hadn't been planted in the outside earth yet. One shelf of the greenhouse contained the plants that my teenage self was obsessed with, and subsequently cared for. Next to the greenhouse was a little fenced patch of dirt that my mom planted to use for crops once they began sprouting. For some context, I lived in south of Alpine Mountains my whole life, close enough that I'm scared to leave the house at night, but far enough that I'd never personally heard anything before this incident. I always take my dogs with me when I venture outside. One of my big dogs, War, always wears a GPS tracking collar, because he can and will disappear for hours, and it's terrifying to think that we might never see him again. This kind of collar has an electric field that warns him against leaving the yard. It was about 6 in the afternoon on an early spring day, so the sun was relatively low in the sky. I was inside the greenhouse, watering my shelf of plants. My dogs were much closer to the house than me, so I basically was in the woods alone. As I'm caring for the plants, I hear cracking in the woods. I froze, knowing there was nobody else around me. Then it starts. Horrible sounds coming from the woods. It sounded like a horse trying to mimic a child's scream of joy, but it was wrong. Too high-pitched, too scratchy, and it kept looping in a strange way. The sounds made the hairs on my arms stand up straight, but overall, it was far too close for my superstitious teenage self. I knew the rules by heart. I finished watering the plant I was looking at, pretended to check the others, and deemed them fine, then began quietly putting things back where they belonged. The greenhouse was covered up in fogged up plastic, so anything out there would have seen nothing but my shadow. I carefully left the greenhouse, locking the door behind me. I wasted no time in climbing the hill towards the house, not looking back. My dog, War, noticed me and started walking towards me. Out of nowhere, he began sprinting and snarling. It was the first and only time I had feared my dog. He's always been a giant baby, but that day I felt nothing but instinctual terror. Before I could react, he was gone. He had disappeared into the woods, and he vanished for 6 days. I honestly thought whatever I heard in the woods had gotten to him. He eventually showed back up, and now he has a nasty scar through his left eye. The vet told us it wouldn't interfere with his sight, but was very noticeable. To this day, he stays close enough to touch me when I get near the greenhouse. There was only one other time he ever reacted though. When I looked, I could have sworn I saw a goat staring at me. Funny considering there is not a single goat in my very sparse neighborhood.